We got a bidet! Hey everybody, and welcome back to another video. In today's video I'm talking to you about the new Guardians of the Galaxy 3 movie. I just went and saw it. We saw it in IMAX. I'm gonna go ahead and give you a rundown of the movie, and then also tell you my thoughts about it. So let's get started. Alright, so I actually have all the character names pulled up here to hopefully help me along the way. Just because we're not huge Marvel fans, but we do like the movies, so we like to keep up with them. Before I actually dive into the story, I do want to preface that we're not, as involved with Marvel as we are with Star Wars. So basically, we've seen like the movies, we've played a handful of the video games, but we definitely have not read the comics. So that kind of perspective we don't have. We just have, from casually watching the movies and also, like I said, playing the video games. There's been a handful of those that we have played. Haven't played all of them, of course. But I will point out one in particular that is similar to this movie is the Guardians of the Galaxy Telltale game. So if you've played that before, there are some... I wouldn't say connections, but similarities between the two for a good chunk of the film. Not 100%, but a good chunk. So this movie opens up with basically seeing Rocket's background. So kind of weave throughout this entire film, we get the backstory of Rocket, of how, he became what he is. Rocket isn't a normal raccoon character. Clearly he's one that stands like a human and knows how to talk and, can invent things and shoot guns and all that. So we get that background of how he became what he is. And what we get from that is that he was part of a lab, and there was a guy called the High Evolutionary. And what he did is he took these animals and tried to uh, change or enhance these life forms. But really, what the problem is that he doesn't care about the consequences. All he cares about are results. And if the results aren't what he wants, well, then he tosses them aside and tries again. And which is, very inhumane when it comes to life forms. So yeah, we get throughout this movie Rocket's background of, he basically lives in a cage, and then, he was changed a little bit by the High Evolutionary, and he, has some friends in there, makes connections, eventually develops language, talks to these friends, has a little family, quote unquote, and then more things happen, and we'll get to that a little later. But yeah, throughout this whole movie, we're kind of getting, the idea of where he's from. The present day timeline within the film kicks off with, let's see, what was that guy's name? Warlock. This character named Warlock comes blowing through nowhere, and he flat out tries to take out Rocket. Really, he's trying to take Rocket as a bounty, but he's just ripping through people left and right on Nowhere, all the different Guardians. And I think it's kind of interesting. Some of the things that they showed, this movie was actually kind of graphic with its violence, in more ways than one. But there's one part where he messes Nebula up so much, and she's all discombobulated, and she's re-putting herself back together in normal form. And you see her body cracking like an exorcist film, exorcism, how they bend all weird and whatnot. So yeah, he's coming through the city. He's trying to get Rocket for a bounty, and he's not successful. But what he does do is he messes up Rocket quite a bit. And this is kind of what we see in the previews with, Rocket being put on, this operating table in the ship, and they're trying to hook him all up to these machines to try and make sure that he's okay and that they can take care of him. And really, he's in a comatose the whole, well, not the whole film, but I'd say a good 2/3 of the film. And that's where we're getting those flashbacks, is while he's under, we're learning about his backstory. While that's all happening, the Guardians group are trying to figure out how they can help him, because they realize that if they were to try to, perform surgery on him or whatever, that he would actually be rigged to explode, because when the High Evolutionary made him, he didn't want his stuff to be tampered with, his creations. So he set these creatures to self-destruct if they were to be, quote-unquote, opened up. And so they figure out where Rocket was from based on some of the coding and whatnot, and they take off. And I don't remember what the planet was called, but if you watch the trailers, it's the one where they're kind of out in space, and it kind of looks like the Blob in a way. Again, I apologize, I don't know these planets' names, but they go there, and they are trying to infiltrate the base so that they can find this data piece that would be able to tell them what they could possibly do to help Rocket heal and feel better. So they break into this base. They have to have the help of the group. I think they're called the Rangers, the ones where Sylvester Stallone is actually in charge of the group. Gamora was part of that group as well. That's how we get reunited with her. But basically, they give them these suits that help them, get to this base, planet, whatever it is, the Blob. And then they have workers' gear so that they look like they blend in. So they get there and they land, they cut a hole in the base, and the base is kind of on alert, like, uh-oh, something's wrong. And by the time that security shows up, Star-Lord's playing it off as, what took you so long? There's this hole up here and we're trying to fix it. Why did you open that door knowing that this could have like sucked us all out, kind of a thing. So they kind of bypass the initial security at first, and they get to the point of where Gamora decides to put one of the secretary people at gunpoint and to get the information about Rocket. They eventually do get the information for Rocket. It's like stored in this little blob ball of information. But unfortunately, what happens is that they get snuffed out, and the people of that area, base, world, whatever, turn on them and basically figure out that they're not supposed to be there. Our Guardians do make it out, not 100%, great, because they get messed up a little bit along the way, especially Drax. He gets shot a couple of times, but he makes it, he survives, and the crew gets away, and they find out that to get exactly the help that they need, they have to go find this high evolutionary. Rocket does eventually pass away. However, he like in a last effort to try to save Rocket, Star-Lord basically gives him CPR, and we see kind of what Rocket's conscience is doing, and he's meeting some of his old friends, or his old friends from the lab, and he's ready to join them. His friends that have passed away, I should have said that, and they say it's not your time, and he goes back and he's alive again with the group. The last good chunk of this film, because that was probably about half of it, was them going to this base, getting the information how to help Rocket, and then eventually they try to help him. He passes away, but then they bring him back. The rest of the film is going after this guy, because he keeps the High Evolutionary wants Rocket because Rocket was his one specimen that gained the ability to be able to invent. So he really has this interest in Rocket because he has this ability to do this stuff, and Rocket eventually learns how it's working, how to improve it and make it work, because that's how he's special. He knows how this stuff works, and basically the High Evolutionary isn't able to perfect his work, and he decides to just kill all the beings that he's been working on, which is what led to the killing of Rocket's friends. But in retaliation of killing his friends, Rocket scratched and clawed an insane amount out of that dude's face. Because we see in the commercials he has this RoboCop looking thing going on. They actually call him RoboCop in the film. But he has a partial face, almost like he's Leatherface from Texas Chainsaw Massacre, that's covering up his normal face. And that's the whole reason why he wants Rocket. He wants to basically take him out for revenge. That's why he sent, what's his name? He sent Warlock after him, so he can, do what he wants with him, because he's the one specimen that escaped. However, the High Evolutionary has his own base, home, whatever you want to call it, on this place called Counter Earth. And he's made his own society because, again, his motive is to perfect society. And so he's trying to create these different versions of Earth where the world is perfect and all the beings are perfect. he's even at the point in like present day where he's testing things on children, and he's trying to make it so that, you know, children can go without having to sleep for extremely long periods of time and be super active. I think it was like days without having to go to sleep. But, you know, Rocket and all the Guardians are trying to go and take him out. It happens where Star-Lord, Nebula, and Groot go to approach this guy, and Nebula is supposed to stay outside because they won't allow her in because her arm is considered a weapon. They go into the base, and they are trying to they're trying to find this character, so it's not the High Evolutionary, it's one of his like workers, and he has like this piece of technology on his head, and that piece has some information to help Rocket. So I'm a little bit out of order here. I apologize for that. But once they get that device, that's what helps them fix getting Rocket. But once Rocket is alive, that's when they go after the High Evolutionary for the grand finale. And the reason why they are going after him not only is to take him out, but also during this whole fiasco, Nebula, Drax, and Mantis end up on this like base, which is actually a ship for the High Evolutionary. It takes off into space because he basically decides that what he created isn't perfect, and he wants to just destroy Counter Earth, make a new set of civilization, and start over. And so not only do the Guardians have to go get their friends back, but they also find out that there's the tons of children on board as well. And so they go out there to save all the children. They actually end up finding out that there's tons of animals on there as well that will be, you know, used for experiments, and they save all the animals. We do get this final showdown between all of them, the High Evolutionary, and then all of our Guardians characters. One last thing that was pretty major was that when they went after the High Evolutionary, they also called in backup from Nowhere, and basically the Nowhere planet base skull arrived to help them as well in like this one big final battle at the end. There's a lot of other things going on in the film. As far as like, you know, we got the comedy that you would expect, the classic music that you would expect, and the banter back and forth. There was a good chunk of it that I thought was pretty funny. But the way that this movie wraps up is that Star-Lord basically realizes that, hey, you know, I got family back on Earth, and which was brought up a time or two in the film of like, don't you ever wonder what's going on with your family back on Earth? And it finally gets to him, and he decides to split from the group. And not only him, but also Mantis decides to split from the group. But Rocket, Nebula, and Groot stay on Nowhere because Rocket was actually decided or voted on or chosen to be the next leader of the Guardians of the Galaxy. So they're going to stay on Nowhere, and then the last one, Gamora, she ends up going back to her Rangers group, the group that's led by Sylvester Stallone. So we leave this movie with them all separated. They do have a new group. The Warlock guy throughout the film like is working with his mom, and the mom's a bit ruthless, and we kind of see throughout that he really doesn't necessarily agree with the way that she's doing things. They were hired by the High Evolutionary to, you know, track and get Rocket and bring him back to the High Evolutionary, and they're doing this because they really need money to support their people with the credits and whatnot. But throughout the film, we can see that he doesn't agree with his mom, and by the end of it, he actually decides to work with the Guardians. So at the end of this movie, we do get a new set of Guardians of the Galaxy. And also Star-Lord returns to Earth and goes to meet with his grandpa. So that's kind of what the movie is. Again, I apologize. I don't know all the planet names, and I think I had one small thing out of order. But my opinion on the movie, I thought the movie was a lot of fun. I thought it was good. I didn't enjoy the second Guardians of the Galaxy very much, and I thought that this movie was definitely a step above it. I don't know if I'd put it over the first one. During the credits, they were having like a whole bunch of like Polaroid pictures of what has happened in the previous two movies, and just seeing some of those things and remembering how cool the first one was, at least to me. I think it's close. Definitely better than the second one, but really up there with the first one. I will put out there that it is a very emotional movie. With Rocket's past, it was very, very rough. Also, dealing with the fact of, all the emotion that went into, dealing with how Rocket, was trying to come back and, be okay. I mean, the stuff you see in the trailer is just scratching the surface of the emotion in this film, when they're all worried about Rocket. So I would say be prepared for some emotional roller coaster. This movie had a lot of action, a lot of humor, and a lot of emotion. And so, in my opinion, well, I guess just talking through it, I'd probably say it's... I don't know if I can say if it was my favorite. I'd have to see the first one again. But I do think it was a very, very good film. And I believe it'll do very well at the box office. I would recommend, if you plan to see this movie, see it in theaters. It definitely deserves to be seen on the big screen. I know I haven't seen all of the recent Marvel projects, but I have heard some not so great things. But I do believe that this movie would probably bring people back. Just because I thought it was really good. Yeah, that's about all I got for you. I enjoyed the movie, but like I said, be ready for action, comedy, emotional roller coaster. If you enjoy this type of video, make sure to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. We do talk about movies a lot on this channel. We heard from you all that you want to see more of these things, so we're trying to put those out there for you. Drop us a like if you liked the video, and drop us a comment letting us know what you thought of Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. And then, as always, everybody, thank you for watching. We'll see you next time.